everything changed in one explosive moment. Cameras were rolling, reporters were stunned, and the entire country froze as one Labour MP after another stood up and walked out. No warnings, no statements, just a brutal public collapse of Starmer's leadership happening live on air. For the first time in years, Britain watched a political giant fall apart in real time. And no one could believe what they were seeing. In this unfolding political nightmare, everything spiralled out of control faster than anyone could understand. What began as a routine interview inside Labour headquarters twisted into a moment that sent shockwaves across the entire country. The tension in the room was so thick it almost felt physical, as if every breath carried the weight of something terrible about to happen. Starmer sat in front of the cameras trying to defend yet another internal dispute. But even he could sense it. Something was breaking behind him. The whispers in the corridor grew louder, the phones vibrated non-stop, and the atmosphere shifted from uncertainty to full-blown rebellion. Suddenly, a door opened. A single MP stepped out, face cold, jaw tight, eyes locked straight ahead. No emotion, no hesitation. Reporters turned instantly. They knew something was wrong. Seconds later, another MP followed, then another, and then another. Within moments, the quiet hallway behind Starmer was transformed into a moving river of political defiance. The anchors tried to stay calm, but their voices trembled as they described the impossible. Labour MPs were walking out one after another while the cameras were still live. Britain had never seen anything like this. It felt less like politics and more like the collapse of a regime. At first, viewers thought it was some kind of misunderstanding, maybe a scheduled meeting or a coordinated announcement. But then the first MP spoke, only 2 words, whispered to a nearby reporter, yet loud enough to strike the entire nation like a hammer. "It's over." That was the moment everything shifted. Social media erupted, live chat feeds exploded. The country entered a state of collective shock as people tried to grab their phones, refresh their screens, and understand what was happening. Was this a protest, a revolt, or something deeper, something that had been boiling under the surface for months? Inside the Labour headquarters, panic swept through the staff like a storm. Advisors rushed between rooms. Communications teams scrambled to control the damage. But the chaos was too big, too fast, too unexpected. Even senior officials, usually calm under pressure, were seen whispering into their phones with shaking hands. Starmer, still on camera, tried to continue speaking, but everyone could see the fear flicker across his face. The live broadcast captured something rare. A leader losing control in real time, watching his own party crumble behind him while millions witnessed it from their screens. The walkout didn't slow. It intensified. MPs who had stayed silent for months suddenly found their voice. Reports spread of group chats blowing up with messages of frustration, screenshots surfacing of internal clashes and long-buried disputes rising to the surface. For years, cracks inside Labour had been quietly ignored, patched over, or hidden from the public. But now those cracks ripped open like a fault line. The rebellion wasn't just against policy disagreements, it was against leadership itself. And the most shocking part was not that it was happening, but that it was happening live in front of the entire country, without warning. People across Britain watched in disbelief as the number grew. 5 MPs, 12 MPs, as 19 MPs, each one stepping out, each one refusing to look back. This wasn't a small disagreement or a symbolic protest. This was a coordinated message, delivered with silence, delivered with action. And the silence was louder than any speech they could have given. News channels cut their regular programming. Radios interrupted music mid-song. Phones buzzed in living rooms, in offices, in shops. Everywhere you looked, people were glued to their screens, witnessing what felt like the political event of the decade. And in the centre of it all, Starmer, trapped between the cameras in front of him and the rebellion behind him. His expression hardened, but the cracks showed. He tried to maintain control, saying the party remained united, but the words collapsed the moment they left his mouth. Nothing about this moment was united. Nothing was stable. Nothing was safe. A party built on discipline was tearing itself apart, and the entire world was watching the destruction unfold minute by minute. What no one knew yet, what no one could even imagine, was that this was only the beginning. The next few minutes would take this crisis from shocking to historic. What followed next pushed the situation far beyond anything Britain had witnessed in modern politics. The cameras kept rolling, but even the broadcasters seemed overwhelmed, unsure whether to focus on Starmer's frozen expression or the steady stream of MPs marching out behind him. It was chaos unfolding with impossible clarity, every second more shocking than the last. Anchors whispered off screen, producers shouted orders from control rooms, and yet nothing could stop the raw truth happening live. Labour wasn't just shaking. It was collapsing, and everyone watching could feel it. Inside the headquarters, the atmosphere shifted from confusion to outright rebellion. Staff ran through hallways trying to understand who had resigned and who was still holding on. The usual political language, disagreement, internal tension, strategic differences no longer applied. This wasn't negotiation, this wasn't controlled messaging. This was an eruption, a complete breakdown of discipline. And with every MP who left, the silence that followed became heavier, darker, harder to ignore. It felt like the walls of the building were closing in, trapping the leadership in a moment they could not escape. Then the 30th MP stepped out. Reporters were no longer calm. They were scrambling, tripping over their words, desperate to process what was unfolding. Phones rang non-stop, screens refreshed every second, and the number 30, 31, 32 kept rising like a countdown to something catastrophic. People watching at home stopped what they were doing entirely. Shops turned their televisions up louder. Office workers crowded around computer screens. Streets filled with people staring at their phones in disbelief. The entire nation paused because no one could understand how the situation had spiralled so fast. Behind the scenes, leaks began pouring out. Staffers whispered about meetings that had gone wrong, warnings that had been ignored, promises made and broken. Screenshots of internal arguments started appearing online, hinting that the walkout wasn't spontaneous at all. It was planned, coordinated, and executed with military precision. The rebellion wasn't born this morning. It had been building quietly, secretly, for months. And when the moment finally came, it hit like an earthquake. A shock so powerful that it tore through the Labour Party structure in seconds. Starmer's team tried to regain control, but every attempt only made things worse. Advisors urged him to end the interview. Communication staff pushed for an emergency statement, but the cameras were already capturing the truth. A live resignation avalanche, a political collapse no speech could hide. Starmer turned slightly as if hoping the walkout had slowed, but instead he saw yet another MP stepping through the doorway, then another behind them. His face tightened, his jaw locked. For the first time, he looked like a man watching the ground open beneath him. Meanwhile, the public reaction exploded. Hashtags surged to the top of social platforms within minutes. Live comments flooded in faster than channels could display them. People demanded answers, demanded explanations, demanded someone step forward and admit what had triggered this historic rebellion. But no explanations came. No one spoke. The MPs who walked out kept their eyes down, their faces blank, giving no clues about the storm that had pushed them to this point. Then came the first official statement from an MP who had been silent throughout their entire career. A single message posted online, short and devastating. We warned him. He didn't listen. 10 words that shattered any remaining illusion of control. 10 words that poured fuel on the fire and made the situation explode even further. If there had been hope of damage control before it died instantly, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a revolt. Planned, deliberate, and unstoppable. By now, the number had climbed to 40, and people across Britain began to grasp the scale of the crisis. This wasn't a minor disagreement inside the party. This wasn't a temporary flare-up that would disappear after a speech or a meeting. This was the kind of political event that changes governments, shifts power, and forces countries into new directions. Even foreign news outlets cut into their regular programming to cover the growing disaster. Inside Labour headquarters, the atmosphere grew colder. Staff stood still, frozen between panic and disbelief. Phones buzzed, printers whirred, journalists shouted questions, but nothing could drown out the simple, brutal truth. The party was breaking apart in front of the world, and the leader at its centre could only watch as everything he built dissolved around him. When the 43rd MP stepped forward, calm, silent, unshaken, the room erupted once more. Reporters shouted, cameras zoomed in, social media shattered under the weight of reactions, and somewhere deep inside the building, a door slammed, sending an echo through the halls like the final note of a funeral bell. But as shocking as this mass resignation was, the real bombshell was still ahead. Because the rebellion wasn't just about walking out, it was about what they were planning to reveal next. The moment the 43rd MP walked out, something shifted, something deeper, and far more dangerous than anyone watching could have imagined. Up until this point, the nation had witnessed a political collapse, a shocking walkout, a live on-air rebellion. But now the question, burning through every screen, every newsroom, every living room, was simple. Why? What had pushed nearly 4 dozen MPs to abandon their own party, their own leader, all at the same time in front of the entire country? For several minutes, there was only silence, a heavy, eerie silence that felt like the pause before a storm unleashes its full fury. Even reporters stopped speaking, anchors leaned forward, camera operators held their breath. Everyone sensed the truth. This wasn't the end of the crisis, it was the opening act. The rebels hadn't walked out just to leave, they walked out to say something. And now the nation waited for the hammer to fall. Deep inside Labour headquarters, the chaos intensified. Staff frantically checked internal documents, searching for the source of this revolt. Advisors grabbed folders, phones, tablets, anything that could provide a clue. But the information wasn't inside the building, it was outside, in the hands of the MPs who had walked away. Those MPs now stood together, not divided, not confused, but united in a way that felt almost unnervingly coordinated. They had moved from the corridor to the front steps. Cameras swarmed around them, but no one spoke. Their silence only made the tension worse. Then at last, one MP stepped forward, the same MP who had posted the cryptic 10-word message earlier. Reporters pushed forward, microphones raised, expecting a statement. But instead of speaking, the MP held up a tablet, and on its screen was something no one in the crowd expected to see. A long, encrypted file being prepared for release. Heads turned. Gasps rippled through the reporters. The MP stared directly into the cameras, and with a calmness that sent chills down the spine of every viewer, they said only one sentence. The country deserves the truth. Those words detonated like a bomb. Newsrooms erupted instantly. Producers shouted for legal teams. Analysts demanded verification. Social media became a battlefield of speculation. Was this a leak? A scandal? A betrayal? A document? Secret report? No one knew. But everyone sensed that whatever this file contained had the power to blow the political system apart. Inside the headquarters, Starmer's team froze. Some claimed the file was fabricated, others demanded immediate action. Some feared this was the culmination of every internal disagreement that had been quietly ignored for months. Starmer tried to regain control, calling for order, insisting that the rebels were misleading the public. But his voice no longer carried the authority it once did. Outside, the MPs ignored him completely. Their focus was on the country, not the party. Suddenly, the file dropped online. It spread across platforms in seconds, shared faster than anyone could track. Downloads skyrocketed. Screens lit up nationwide. And although the contents were still unreadable at first, encrypted, protected, locked behind layers of passwords, the sheer existence of such a file was enough to drive the crisis into uncharted territory. People didn't need to read it to feel its impact. The message was clear. These MPs were not resigning in protest. They were resigning with evidence. As experts scrambled to decode the file, something else happened, something even more shocking. Several MPs who hadn't walked out now went dark. Their social media accounts vanished, their phones switched off, their staff unreachable. It was as if they were suddenly caught between two collapsing worlds, the leadership crumbling behind them and the rebellion erupting in front of them. The uncertainty created a new wave of panic across Britain. If 43 MPs had resigned, how many more were silently preparing to follow? Then another shock. A message appeared from a second group of MPs, this time in a private channel used by party officials. The message was brief but devastating. If the leadership denies this, we will release more. In that instant, the crisis transformed into a full-blown confrontation. The leadership was trapped, the rebels were emboldened, and the public was left suspended between two versions of the truth, waiting for one side to reveal the final blow. Television networks went into non-stop coverage. Analysts dissected every word, every movement, every expression caught on camera. People across Britain stayed glued to their screen, unable to walk away even for a moment. It was no longer just a political crisis, it was a national drama playing out live, minute by minute, impossible to predict, impossible to ignore. And through it all, the encrypted files sat online like a ticking time bomb. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before someone cracked it. And when they did, whatever was inside would decide the fate of the crisis and perhaps the fate of the party itself. But the rebels weren't waiting for the file to be decoded. They had something else planned, something bigger. Something they had kept hidden until this exact moment, something they were now preparing to reveal.